I heard somebody say, oh, well, if you've met one person with autism, you've met one person with autism.
This week, we're coming to you with a very special episode of the Digital Circus Life. A bit different to our usual standard of content, but please bear with us, it's a corker. I'm talking to the incredible Nikie Forster from the curious Lighthouse, all about Neurodiversity Celebration Week. We hope you enjoy. So here we are with the lovely Nikie Forster on a very special additional episode of the Digital Circus Life. And as you can see, I am without Alan today. This is just the two of us girls together chatting on something that's actually very important to both of us. And that's about neurodiversity, and specifically neurodiversity in our families whilst we are running our very successful, very incredible businesses out there into the ether. So Nikie, thank you so much for being here today. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Thanks for having me along.
And thank you very much, because you were the one who brought this subject to the table, to be quite honest, as we are right now in Neurodiversity Week, Celebration Week. I didn't know it was coming up. I'm a bit rubbish when it comes to celebration days and celebration weeks because I get blinkered to it. So thank you so much for bringing it to forth. So tell me, why did you want to have this conversation today?
So I think it's really important. I think one of the things that you tend to find with people who have neurodiversity as part of their, lifestyle, or in their families, you become accustomed to it. You get aware of it, and I think for those who it isn't part of their life, I think certainly over the last couple of years, there's been this sudden influx of people talking about it and people being diagnosed. And I hear a lot of people go, oh, well, we're all a little bit neurodiverse. And I want to go into rant mode at that point, but I kind of hold it back.
Yeah.
But that's because it's about awareness. Mm-hmm. And I think more people are being diagnosed about it because more people are talking about it. And they're suddenly going, oh, okay, that rings a bell. Yeah. So I don't think it's anything new. I just think that because more people are talking about it, more people are getting diagnosed, and that kind of then rolls on. And the more people that are aware of it, the more people can, deal with it in their own ways, whether it be in their family or whether they're work colleagues or things like that. And I just thought it'd be a really interesting topic to talk about. Plus, like you said, running your own business with neurodiverse conditions in the family can be an interesting, whatever this mime is, kind of of how do you make it work?
Absolutely. And we're in the Digital Circus Life, we use that. We're juggling and consistently juggling, but I sometimes feel that those battens are on fire as I'm juggling as well. And at some point my hands might get burnt. Just a little thing, so you said that you want to go into rant mode sometimes. One of the little things that I inwardly rant about a little bit at the moment, and you are absolutely right, a lot more people are being diagnosed out there with various conditions. But it's those out there who are not being diagnosed, who are self-diagnosing themselves as potentially ADHD or ASD because of the fact that they might be a little bit flitty, or they might have to write. And actually, I think sometimes I feel those things are just part of our makeup and how we are. And yes, we are all probably, you're right, a little bit neurodiverse. We all are. I definitely probably have traits of that in me. And I wouldn't be surprised because my children and my father is very much on that spectrum as well. So if I didn't, I would be surprised. But I think when you are truly looking in the face of children as well, who are, we're in a struggle point at the moment, I'm not going to lie. And it's not something we openly talk about. And I think it's quite tricky for us, particularly because we are a very bubbly brand. Our yellow tuxedo business, our digital circus community, we are very positive and we are very outwardly, the world is okay. But actually, like most of us out there, we have stuff going on behind the scenes that we just don't lead with. And I think, Nikie, you might resonate with that as well. So just to give some background to anyone listening right now or watching right now, to give you where I'm at, and then Nikie, if you want to share where you are as well. So Alan and myself, we are a family of 5. We have 3 amazing children. We have Lydia Rose, who is 10. We have Benjamin, who is 8. And we have our neurotypical child, who is Joseph, who is 6 years old. And we are quite new to the realm of neurodiversity. We weren't actually aware that 2 of our children were neurodivergent up until about 2-3 years ago, really. Our daughter has a serious health condition, which led to her had an acute admission into hospital with a brain injury. And it was throughout that time in hospital with her brain injury that actually it evolved that she did have ASD on top of everything else going on. And actually the trauma of her brain injury was allowed her mask, I suppose, to kind of to drop down. And what we have seen since that time in hospital is a very clearly ASD child with additional needs who is just trying to find her path. And actually she's at a point now where she's about to go into secondary school. So we are on that way of just working out how we can support her best, how she can kind of, she doesn't fit a cookie cutter, no child does, but we're kind of working that out. And since that point as well, our second child, Benjamin, has been diagnosed with PTSD due to his sister's illness. And again, similar situation there. Masking has dropped and behavioural needs have changed within the house. And what we find on a daily basis is that we don't know at what point the phone is going to ring from the school. We don't know if we're having a conversation on the school gate. We don't know what the behaviour is like in school, the upset, the trauma, I suppose, of coming out of school and talking to us at home. And we're just navigating that. So really, we are newbies to neurodiversity, but learning very swiftly. Nikie, what about you?
It's fascinating hearing you talk about it, and kind of seeing some of the similarities, not in the way that it's come about, but just being a parent with a neurodivergent child is an interesting place to be. So we've got one son, Joseph, who is awesome in all regards. Yes, a very good name. He is now 12, but when he was younger, we just said he was a high energy child. That's how we used to explain him. It was all or nothing with him, and we really struggled in the really early days, like when he was like 3 or 4. And when you have those kind of preconceptions about what children should do, you sit at the table until we're all finished, that kind of thing. No, you don't talk over the top of people, and you're trying to teach them how to become a grown-up. And we struggled really with that, and it was a whole world of no. At that age, no, don't do that, no, stop doing, no, you're going to kill yourself, don't jump off that. It was all this kind of thing. When he went to school, year R was fantastic because it's just like a playground. It's it's like that. But year 1, so 5 to 6, when they have to start sitting at tables and start to really kind of hone in on, no, you've got to listen to the teacher, and then you've got to do some work around it. There was a real shift in terms of his attitude towards school and the interaction with school around what was going on. Now, we have been extremely lucky with our schools, both infants, juniors, and now he's just into secondary.
Good.
And that's partly luck, but partly I think we've kind of had that in our minds as we tried to get him into these schools. And he was picked up, particularly in year 2, by a very experienced teacher who said to us, do you want to just come in and have a chat? I talk to a lot of parents who talk about their child might have ADHD, but I think yours actually might. And you might want to get him referred. Now that referral took us about 4 years to get a confirmed diagnosis, partly because of just waiting lists, partly because of the pandemic. But what was interesting in the very first meeting assessment that we had, where it's like gateways, isn't it? You kind of go through one and it's a gateway to the next. In that very first meeting, they said, look, this is going to take a while to get a formal diagnosis, but treat as if. Yeah. Because he was off the scale. It's like 99% of everything was led towards ADHD. So we found out absolutely everything to do with ADHD, and by the time he left junior school, we were fully on board with that. He's been involved in every single step of it, understands it all. We used to call it his racing car brain. And the brakes were a bit dodgy. So, sometimes the brakes worked, sometimes they didn't. But it wasn't until the formal report came through for the ADHD that there was a paragraph at the end that says we're also seeing some autistic tendencies and traits, and you might want to get him assessed for that. And I hesitated. I was like, well, if he's neurodivergent, he's neurodivergent. What else can I learn?
Absolutely.
From that. But actually we thought, well, it might help us to understand that, because I don't know enough about autism to know how it fits. So we did get him assessed. It was a much shorter process because they'd already done all the interviews and questionnaires and everything for the ADHD, and he was formally diagnosed with having autistic spectrum condition. And that is taking me longer to get my head around, because it doesn't feel as clear cut as ADHD. And so that's kind of where we're currently at. And I think that there's a whole bunch of things that we've gone through as parents in terms of getting a head around it. And I know this is a very long intro for me talking.
No, you're all right. You're fine. Crack on.
But there was something that really helped me really recently that I thought that I would share, and it's a poem called "Welcome to Holland."
I read that recently. It's incredible. Can you explain to the listeners?
Yeah. So, "Welcome to Holland." I wrote down the author's name, Emily Perl Kingsley, and I'll send you the links to it. So if you want to put them in the details, you can. And it just absolutely really struck me. So what it is it's about talking about a parent bringing up a child with a disability. So I think Emily herself has a child with Down syndrome, and so she went through this herself. And she talks about the fact that when you're having a child, particularly if it's your first child, you plan for this amazing adventure. And she equates it to go to Italy for this, holiday of a lifetime. And you get the guidebooks to Italy, and you plan out where you're going to go in Italy, and all your friends are also going to Italy, so it's going to be brilliant. And you learn the language, and then you land on the plane, and you're on the runway, and the pilot comes on and says, "Welcome to Holland."
Yeah.
And you go, "Well, hang on a minute. I'm meant to be in Italy. Yeah. I planned for Italy." And she says it's not like he's landed in some war-torn city or somewhere that's horrible. Holland is a lovely place, but it's different to what you expected. And so you have to learn a different language, and you have to create a different community, and you have to work out, well, how am I going to navigate this? Because it's different, and it's a slower pace than Italy is. And it just, for me, that kind of, that makes sense.
It still takes you a long time to kind of understand that new language, though, doesn't it? Yeah. And for that has been I read that poem literally about a week ago, and it resonated with me because with Lydia Rose, she wasn't born with additional needs. That we were aware of anyway. Yeah. We always think she was a bit quirky, and quirky is a great term. And she used to wear kimonos and welly boots and everything to go on the train with us to she was there, and she owned it, and we just kind of went, "Oh, that's quirky Lydia Rose." So we have again exactly that. We're going to Italy. When we were there, we had a certain type of child in our life that we had in our heads, because all parents do it. You have those aspirations, you have that kind of, you're planning out this, you're planning out their future career path, even though they're not going to do that, because you definitely know they're going to be a DJ and doing something, whatever they want to do. You're planning out their future partners and weddings, and it gets created, whether it's true or not. It's what you do. And then when it switches, and for us it was a switch, we had one child one day, we were critically ill the next day, and then came out and like, oh, okay. And it's taken me the best part of 2 years to have that level of acceptance. And actually our recent consultant's appointment with one of the doctors, she went, "How's it going?" And it was the first time I went, it's not going back to what it was. Yeah. It's not ever going to go back to what it was. And it's that level of understanding that she's incredible as she is. Her quirks and everything are still there. It's just the path that we thought we were going down is likely to be a different path. And we are at that point where she's going into mainstream school. Brilliant. But we are on the edge of whether she should go for more formalised special school support that way in the future, because that's where we're at. And it's a horrible feeling, because you hear people when you talk about it outwardly, and that's probably why I don't talk about it outwardly to wider community and family and friends or support groups, is that it's the child you got in there. She's lovely anyway. Yes, she is. But it's that almost, I have to say it right without sounding like I'm a horrible person, but that it's been taken away from me. Yeah, it's switched, and that's not my choice, and that's not her choice. It's just how it is, and there is that period of adjustment to go, okay, and it's fine. And it's a really weird feeling to know that, because Holland is great, but it still takes that time to work out why you're there, what you're doing, how to speak the language, changes in which, because things for us, I don't know about you, but transitions are a really tricky thing in our house. If we are loaded up with stuff going on, if it's a high spoon day, you know, lots of things going on, you know, that's when we find it really tricky, because she cannot deal with those quick transitions. And we're a fast-paced business, we're a fast-paced family, we're a fast-paced life, and that's only going to get more fast-paced as she gets older. And then obviously trying to understand that with Ben as well. So that brilliant is a great, and I will make sure that we put that in the show notes, because you know, it does resonate quite a lot, and with a lot of our listeners. So Nikie, so coming at it from a business head, because that's, you know, we are a business podcast, but how does that impact you, or if it does or doesn't, but how does it impact you running a business for yourself with ASD as part of your makeup in your family?
Sure. So I think it from two perspectives. I think so. The first one is I started my business for myself just before Joe started school, and just before then the whole talk about ADHD and everything came into play. So I didn't start my business because of it, but I'm so glad that I do run my own business, and now knowing it, because there are lots of appointments to go to, and I have to take him to and from school. He gets too distracted. He can't ride a bike, you know, to school on his own or anything like that. And it's not close by, because, you know, we were just talking about the fact that you have to choose your schools quite carefully to make sure the fit is right. So the flexibility that I have in working for myself has really worked for our family. On the other side of that, I think I've learned so much about neurodivergent conditions that in what I do, which is training, when I have people in the room, I see it much more readily, and I'm much more able to know what to do in those scenarios. And I would never call anybody out on it, because I think what you tend to find as adults, if you haven't been diagnosed as a child, you kind of either you have a child that is diagnosed, and then you suddenly realise, oh, okay, that rings bells, which is what my husband did. He went, hang on a second, this ADHD malarkey, that all ticks all my boxes. So you get that kind of realisation, but you don't need to necessarily be diagnosed as an adult, because you've been doing it for so long. You've worked out.
It's part of your lifestyle. Yeah,
exactly. But for others, I think, particularly understanding things like sensory processing disorder, which is kind of like one of those things that runs along nearly all of the neurodivergent conditions. So bright lights, extra sounds, you know, the smells that neurotypical people may not pick up on, for somebody who's neurodivergent in the room might be a real deal breaker as to how long am I going to be able to sit here and actually pay attention to what's happening. So I think the knowledge of it has really helped. The flexibility has really helped. I'm trying to think if there's a downside to it. I think if I was more ambitious than I am, there might be, because of, you know, wanting to have much more work in, and therefore, well, then how do we deal with childcare? Even though the expectation of when you got a son who's 12, well, surely they should be able to get to and from school on their own by now.
It's tricky.
Yeah, but
it is, and
I think I work with what we've got, and I always have. So the challenges are probably more personal than business related. I can actually see more benefits to knowing about it, and how I can use that knowledge to help others within my business.
So that's a real that's a super skill there, and actually something I was because I'm a governor as well, on top of all that. Why not be as busy as I possibly can? But I was in a training yesterday, and it was talking about pupil premium and funding, and how that could be used to support obviously the more disadvantaged children in the class to have better access to quality education. And actually the idea was that money should be spent on the teaching resources regardless, because yes, that money is ring fenced for that particular group of children. But actually, the ripple effect over across that is actually by improving that quality of teaching and the way that they approach those, it's going to ripple effect to your disadvantaged children in the class anyway. And it kind of got me thinking, like, why is that not just a thing anyway? And it's same with SEN and anything like that. It's school. That more and more, as we've already kind of alluded to, more and more people are getting that diagnosis, whether we're all that little bit neurodivergent or not. And it's just like, yes, but some of us really are, and it's just like, don't dilute that little bit. We all have that in us, but yes, some people really do need that extra support.
Yeah.
But if that is the case, and more and more children are, so we have a really high rate of SEN in our particular primary school, and actually that probably outweighs the amount of neurotypical children in the school. So actually the model is wrong, because we are cookie cutter this. We're getting this particular education system, and we're trying to fit these other children into that, and it may not work, and the funding is not there, and whatever. Why not do exactly what you've done there? I'm adapting my teaching styles to be a bit more fluid, a bit more accepting of the differences in the room, and it doesn't matter what that end result is. I can adapt and change, because that's what makes a good teacher, trainer, consult, whatever that's going to be. For me, in business and how it's impacted us, again, it's not different. This has been how we've been doing this for a few years now. And now we've been working in business together for 12 years. We've had children under our feet for 10 years. We've built businesses with babies in the rocker chairs, as I'm like, yeah, I'm fine. Like, never really had a maternity leave in all of that anyway. I was just working throughout it. So I've always been used to having the children around. Yeah. And as my nephew Sammy is ASD as well. He's pretty further up the spectrum than ours. But they went for a sleepover the other day, and they were playing a board game, and our kids get quite feisty. And he went, Auntie Emily, the breath weights, they're quite full on, aren't they? I was like, yes, I mean, they are. they are. But I've just been used to that. But when you were kind of bringing that into when you've labelled it. Yeah, I think it's something you said there as well. It's like you become more kind of in tune to it, don't you? You're kind of seeing those things, and where's that balance between what's someone's being a child and someone who's being a neurodivergent child. Like Ben had a full-on meltdown this week, proper, like, he's 8. But actually, is that a hormone surge because he's 8, or is that him going towards puberty? What is that? And I think it's very easy to go, oh, it's that, and it could not be. So balancing that has been quite tricky. And yeah, it's just, we have to drop it a lot. We have to go, we're just not going to carry on with today or this week, or things have happened. And like Liz was off school the week before half term due to, she had a medical episode. The school didn't want her in, understandably, fine. But that week of work, which was quite a busy week of work, suddenly was not my priority. It had to shift and change. Yeah. And I do sometimes wonder if I was a paid employment, how I would do that balance. I don't know how I would be as flexible as we are with that approach.
I absolutely agree with you on that. If I was still in corporate world, with the amount of appointments, whether it be medical, whether it be with the school, or whether it is just being there at the right time at the beginning and the end of the day for for drop-offs and pickups and making sure he's safe in the house, all those things, how could I accommodate that, particularly at a career professional level?
Yeah.
Because once you are at a certain level, so if I was in corporate world, my job would be L&D manager or something like that. So at that level, would I be able to have some a flexible working that is part-time, that means that I can drop in and that? And I know companies are more adaptable to that after the pandemic.
Yeah.
But a lot of companies are going back to, no, you're in the office, you're working the proper hours. And I'm very grateful that I'm in a position where I'm able to flex and change and do what I need to do to make the family life and work life work.
Yeah. Something you said earlier as well, it was the pathway to getting Joe diagnosed was a long one. And I think I resonate with that as well, because I said we've got 2 of our 3. And I sometimes feel not sorry for, but I am very aware of our youngest child who is not ASD, making sure that he's looked after as well, because we spend so much time focusing on the other 2. But different pathways into getting that diagnosis has been really fascinating. So with our eldest, because of her medical diagnosis, we were in for such a long time. We managed to get her through the EHCP process quite quickly. We had, occupational therapists, physiotherapists, psychologists, all there under one roof doing all of that kind of high intense work whilst we were there. So that came through quite quickly. And then as we were under the psychology team with the NHS, they said, actually, do you know what? We will do that assessment for her as part of that. So we were diagnosed with ASD under the NHS. And then from start to finish, that took less than a year. And I was like, whoa, this is amazing. With Ben, he's going through the CAMS pathway. So, he's been seen with a mental health issue by the NHS. That's still, we're on that waiting list for that. But the school have recognised that support is needed, and therefore we're on the CAMS. So that could be, we're a year in now, it could be 2 years, it could be 3, who knows? And it's really frustrating because I feel there's that grey area of those children who clearly have a need. And if you have a good school behind you who recognise that regardless, it's amazing. But if you're not, that grey area of they haven't got they haven't got a diagnosis yet. We can clearly see there's support needed, but we can't offer that full suite of support yet until we get that diagnosis. What do you do? And I think that's you lasted for 4 years in that period. How did that make you feel as you were building up to that diagnosis?
I think that because that initial the initial assessment gave us almost like an official letter that said treat as if. Because with ADHD, they do something called a QB test, which is hilarious. It's not hilarious, but it is for me because I know Joe's results. So they got Joe to sit in front of a screen, and they almost strapped. It looks like a golf ball on an Alice band to his head with a camera watching it. And what it basically does is it gives him a game to play. He has to press the buttons when he sees certain things, and it tracks hyperactivity, inattentiveness and impulsiveness, but based on this thing. And the results, like I said, it was like 99% for all three of those. And there's like we've got no doubt that he's got ADHD, so treat as if and go through it. And so I think what you have to do in that case is you just advocate for your child, and you become quite a strong kind of saying you need to make things happen. And like I said, our schools were brilliant. So I made sure that I had meetings with the SENCO, the Special Education Needs Coordinators. We're using quite a lot of acronyms that we know all about, but others may not. So I made sure that I had that. I did a 1-page review. Every time he went up a year, I did a 1-pager that said, this is Joe, this is where he's at. These are all the brilliant things about Joe. These are all the adjustments you may want to consider. But, it's your classroom. Make it work. And every single teacher that I said, this is really good to have. We've made some adjustments, and we found, just like you said earlier, we've made some adjustments, and that works well for the whole classroom. So it wasn't like it was singling Joe out. No. Because unlike the school that yours are in, there wasn't actually that many in his school that had extra needs. So, I think you just become a real strong advocate for them. And the one thing I always said to the teachers is he is not a naughty boy. No. He never does anything maliciously. And if you are ever going to call him a naughty boy, you will be wrong. Because that's not him. It will be this other stuff that's going on for him. So I need you to phone me and talk it through with me before you decide that, that's what it, and I can hear my voice getting quite,
Yeah, I know.
But luckily I never needed to do that. They've just been great.
That was part of, so that advocacy word is such a big thing. You are the advocate for your child. And I had this a couple of weeks ago in the school, and our Senko is amazing. She's ultimately fighting a never-ending battle. She's got 60-odd children, 10 of which have got EHCP. Those numbers are huge, right? Yeah. So how can you possibly be all-encompassing and everything for everyone? You just can't. Similarly, like a parents' evening, you've only got, 20 slots? How can you see every parent? So I understand the pressure. Yeah. But when things aren't going right, your main concern is your one child or your two children, but your one child, you are their advocate, and you have to make those things happen. And it doesn't matter that you're inconveniencing other people, because ultimately, if no one else is going to do it for you, so you have to stand up. And it's silly little things for us. So I do firmly believe that stress and distress is a major factor for when Lydia Rose gets sick. Yeah. And they are quite traumatic when we see that. Like, this is, and then you look at, you kind of you look at what's happened in the weeks beforehand, and they're teeny tiny little things, tiny minute details that get lost in the melee of everything else, because in a room of 30 people, and she's very competent, she's very clever, all of this, a bit like Jay, she's a good girl. She's not a disruptive child in there. She's just getting very muddled. And it was a silly little thing, like, end of the day, they've been to assembly or they've had PE and they're leaving the room, and she's coming out from school with her bag and her lunchbox and her hair everywhere and her jumper, and it's all falling out. And I'm like, okay, could we just take 5 seconds? It's not causing extra staff resource, really. It's not causing extra budget, really. It's about going, let's see this situation. Let's break it down. Let's write a list. Let's do it in a step-by-step order. So make sure that 5 minutes at the end of the day, because that's all it takes, is bring it down. Let's think about this logically and get her ready for that next step in the transition to the next activity. And that's good for anyone in the class. Exactly what you said. Everyone should just take that time to reset. Because I'm like that in business. You go from job to job to job. Oh my God, my to-do list is this long. Oh, this morning I was sewing scout badges onto the uniform during a networking meet because I realised it was founders. We're all like it. 5 minutes, it's a great thing to do. And I think, again, coming back to that cookie cutter mold of school, there are things that can easily be, it's just common sense, in my opinion, but it's easy to forget that because you're in the busyness of that. And that's where your advocacy comes in. You have to be the one with the voice to be able to stand up and say it, because you have to look after your child.
Yeah. I think what's interesting about doing that, about advocating for your child, is bringing that back into business. And again, particularly with what I do with learners, I found myself certainly in the kind of the last few years asking more and more, prior to running a program, doing like a welcome video, so that I introduce myself before we arrive. We talk about what we're going to do before we arrive. I ask if anybody wants me to send them the workbook or the plan of what we're going to do. So, people with dyslexia might want to read it through or get it on so that it's spoken. So I'm much more aware of that now, because I find adults don't necessarily want to say whether they know that they've got a neurodivergent condition or not. For some people who know, they might not want to say. For some people, they don't even know. They just know that they struggle in that environment. So I think trying to help adults as well is really important, for them to be able to go, well, hang on a minute, I'm feeling uncomfortable here, or we've been doing this for 20 minutes and I just need to stand up and I need to have some movement, or I'm getting distracted by the lawnmower that's going on outside, and I think just providing that safer space for people to go, it's okay to say, this isn't working for me, or if you did this, it would work better.
I agree. And as an adult, it's such a big thing. And it is very on-trend conversation. And it can only be a good conversation for everyone to be having, to realise that we are all different. Our brains work differently. But I think it's 2024. Learning styles are adaptable and changeable. And it's just having that flow and flexibility to do things in different ways, because I said it's not a cookie cutter. And I think actually what we do need to, as we kind of come towards the end of this conversation, is recognising, and I've always said this, and this is what our psychologist said when we were first diagnosing Lydia Rose, was that I've always just said she's a superhuman, she's incredible, she's quirky, it's a superpower. And I think it's easy to kind of look at especially with a parent of a child, and you're looking at the challenges that they're facing. Actually, what are the positives that they're facing as well? And for me, like, Lydia Rose has no filter. That's bloody brilliant. Do you know what? I think actually, you know where you stand. You know exactly where you stand. She says it how it is. You know what she likes. You know what she doesn't like. And actually, what we are getting her through at this stage is a further 5 more years of education where we're in a formalised structure of this is how this is done. And actually, as we've seen and we're seeing in the media and we're seeing on the LinkedIn land and everywhere, it's okay to be neurodivergent, and people are thriving out there and using that as their superpower. So really, schools is broken. Nikie, as we come towards a close,
yes,
what is one major thing that you have learned? So having Joe and everything that's gone over the last few years and the dynamic that's in your house, what is the one thing that you have really learned that has changed you or changed your feelings and thoughts about neurodiversity?
So I think that there's... Can I have more than one?
Yeah, of course you can. Of course you can.
There's a couple of things. So one of the things that comes to mind is listen to what's not being said. So with Joe, if I ask him too many questions, he'll say, I don't know. But that's not because he doesn't know, it's because he's overwhelmed.
Yeah.
And I've learnt that from him, and I can apply that in business as well. Listen to what's not being said. The other thing that I would say is there is support out there. Bernardo's do some great parenting groups. I'm actually one at the moment for autism. So I'm learning more about that. There are some other and I'll send you a list of resources that I found useful. So there's some great YouTubers as well that do some brilliant stuff around both ADHD and ASC. And that's the other thing. Terminology changes for different people. So I think never assume would be the other thing. I heard somebody say, oh, well, if you've met one person with autism, you've met one person with autism. Yeah. And I think that's so true. And that's true of all neurodivergent conditions. Just because we label it as something doesn't mean to say we understand it, that's what it's like for everybody. So it's treat everybody as individuals and treat them how they want to be treated.
That's a mega one. And that whole, you've only met one person with autism, again, with 2 in our family, polar differences. And one of the I learned from the Signet course, the Bernardo's course as well, was the type of, I can't remember what it was. They're either the rule maker, or they're this, or they're the disruptor, and actually, they come at it in completely different realms of who they are. Ben is very much rules, regulation. This is how it should be. Lydia is like, she's very, and Hollywood's got a lot to answer for. When you if you were to paint a picture of, you got Rayman and all these things you think of, which is ridiculous, right? It's absolutely ridiculous because you don't know. And I think for me, just for listeners we are all going through things. Just because we're not talking about it doesn't mean it's not happening. So, and that's not a pity party, because it's not a pity party. It's just it's our lifestyle. Yeah. But whether you want to go to a support group or you don't, I don't particularly want to go to. I don't want to personally. I just think it's unique to us and how we're working it out. But there are support groups out there if you do wish to find other people who are going through similar situations to you. And understanding that it's just part of your lifestyle, and it will adapt and change, and that's totally fine. It's totally fine. And your kids are your kids. You love them regardless.
Absolutely.
You might actually want to just put them through a wall many times, but you do as parents anyway. And I think that's a really, it's just a challenge, and it's okay to say it's a challenge. Yeah. And I know there are parents out there who are going, no, this is fine, and this is because we're very accepting of it. But if you're finding it a challenge, it's okay to say that too, because it's we're navigating new ground, new waters, new thoughts, new feelings. Like the idea, like a trigger might happen to Ben, and you don't know when that trigger was. Actually, it could have been 8 hours ago, and I didn't know that. And then you're only getting the onslaught of that in the moment, and it's really tricky. And I sometimes just want to go home and go under a duvet and go, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm done with it. It's absolutely sucky. But I don't say it out loud because it's just how you get on with it and how you cope. Yeah. Yeah. Well, Nikie, I could talk to you for hours on it. I think I'm really, really, really glad, because to all of our listeners right now, I said I didn't actually realise that Nikie was a divergent family. I did not know that. We weren't aware. And I think that's testament to what we've been saying today, is that it's part of a lot of our lives, but we don't necessarily lead with that. But when we do have these conversations, I find them incredibly helpful, because it's thank you, basically. Thank you so much for having the bravery as well to say, actually, Emily, I'd quite like to do an episode. This is important to me. Let's have a conversation. And there's so much going on this week as well.
Yeah.
If go and check it out, type in the celebration day, the celebration week. There's loads of events, activities, support sheets. Go and find something to get involved in if you want to. The help and the support is there for you.
Fantastic.
Any last words from you, Nikie?
Well, just to say thank you very much for being so open to talking about it and having me on. It's been wonderful chatting.
Oh, Nikie, absolute pleasure. And to our regular listeners, this is not the last time you're going to see or hear Nikki's amazing voice. She is actually built in for another episode in a few weeks' time, so stay tuned for that. If you are a regular listener, make sure you're subscribed to the podcast and come and hang out with us on Instagram as well. We've got a brand new channel, the Digital Circus LIFE. That's where the adventure really happens. Come and get involved in the conversation. Nikie, thank you so much. To everyone else, have a great week, and we'll speak to you next time. Bye.